Let's continue this personal project process for this school year. We're going to start with three things: the goal, the inquiry questions, and the action plan. Your goal is what you want to achieve during the personal project. Your goal must be challenging for you. It must be interesting. There must be something to inquire about. It's not just something you Google about, but you should be able to inquire about this using a broad range of sources. It should be realistic. Make sure that you can achieve it in the time frame available. Remember, it must be a safe project for you and also ethical. You should check this with your supervisor and the MYP coordinator if you're not sure. And it must be connected to a global context. We'll talk about global context and their connection in a future presentation. Let's look at some examples. So this is one from a student who decides they want to learn to dance and sing to perform as a main character in the school musical. Now, this may be challenging for one person, who maybe doesn't know how to dance and sing, but for somebody who knows how to dance and sing, maybe this is not a challenging goal. So goals will be challenging according to each individual. Here is another example from another student: introducing differentiated instruction in the CCB. Now, this student was interested in the teaching and learning process, and this was a very challenging goal for that student. This other student decided to do a successful artificial insemination for the genetic improvement in cattle. This is for somebody or a student who was interested in the science area and wants to do experimenting, and this was hugely challenging for the student. So your goal will be challenging according to your interests, according to the knowledge that you have when you start this project. Let's have a look at an example of how to improve your goal. This is a student who starts, and the first attempt for her project was to raise awareness in the CCB community about the danger of sugar in drinks. As you can see, well, this is a little bit vague and general, and this is probably something that you could research in Google if you wanted to find out about the danger of sugar in drinks. You would just Google it and find out your answer. And the student there has already decided to raise awareness about it in the CCB community, but without actually finding out what is happening in the community. So then there's a second attempt, which is to find the different amounts of sugars in drinks consumed in the CCB community and find the impact on the human body to raise awareness. So in the second attempt, you can see how the student has pinpointed, okay, what am I going to find about? There's something that I don't know in the CCB community, but the CCB community is huge. So you have to define and target the population that you want to work with. And maybe this ending of saying to raise awareness, well, you don't really know. Find out and do your research first, and then decide the product. Then decide what you want to do with that information. But you don't need to say so from the beginning. And there's a third attempt: to find the rate of consumption of sugary drinks of middle school students at CCB and the impact on the human body. So there you can see that the student has now focused and closed the target population to middle school students at CCB. The student wants to find out how much consumption there is of sugary drinks and also the impact on the human body. Now, what the student will decide to do with that information after the research is another case, and that will be something that you'll have to do towards the end of the project, or as you advance in your project, you will decide what you want to do with that information, and that will be your product. Now your task is to revise and improve your own goal for your project. Now let's continue with inquiry questions. Then your inquiry questions should be clear, understandable. They should be written in a way that they show clearly how you help to answer the goal. All aspects in the goal should be covered. The inquiry questions should be a way to organize your inquiry and your research into 3 and maybe 4 questions. It should be possible to research about them using different types of inquiry. So a way of checking your inquiry questions is to see, can I find this out just by looking in Google? Then there's maybe something wrong with your inquiry questions and you want to take it one step further. So you should be able to write inquiry questions that allow research through media, interviews, surveys, and observation and experiences. So these observations could maybe be through an experiment, through something or some sort of experience that allows you to find out more about your question or allows you to get closer to your goal. Let's have a look at some examples of inquiry questions. So this first student wants to transfer the current CCB MUN webpage to the school website to create a more informative, aesthetic and free of charge webpage which will enhance my technological skills. The first question is, what are the main aspects that make a website attractive and at the same time have the amount of information needed? Second, how can I create an innovative website by using appropriate graphical design tools? And 3, how does a website affect the success of an organization? So as you can see, sometimes the questions, some of them are a little bit different and they're not exactly what's said in the goal, probably because the student has already started researching and knows a little bit about the topic and knows where to direct the questions. For example, in this last one, the student is already thinking that it is important for a website to be organized, and how this will affect the success of it. So you can see there, through the different questions, it's not just what's written in the goal. You have to think a little bit beyond this. Let's look at another example. This one's in Spanish. And I'm going to switch now to Spanish. Y dice, la meta, aprender la forma original de tomar y sacar fotografías con una cámara análoga de 35 milímetros para así capturar una serie de fotos acerca de los momentos de la vida que me inspiran una serie de emociones ordinarias pero significantes. Primera pregunta. ¿Cómo manejar de manera correcta las herramientas y funciones que ofrecen las cámaras análogas de 35 milímetros al momento de tomar una foto? Se ve que esta estudiante no sabe nada acerca de tomar fotografías con una cámara análoga de 35 milímetros. Por lo tanto, lo primero que debe hacer es aprender a manejarla correctamente, las diferentes herramientas y funciones que tiene esa cámara. Después, tiene que pensar en el revelado. ¿Cuáles son los métodos, las técnicas y procedimientos que deben llevarse a cabo para revelar una fotografía tomada por una cámara análoga de 35 milímetros? Y una tercera pregunta que se hace es, ¿qué se debe hacer para preservar una fotografía tomada por una cámara análoga de 35 milímetros para que permanezca y sea conservada en buenas condiciones por mucho tiempo? Si miras la meta, ella menciona en la parte final que quiere capturar una serie de fotos acerca de los momentos de la vida que le inspiran una serie de emociones ordinarias pero significantes. Tal vez al principio del proyecto no se tenga eso claro. De pronto eso es algo que ella desarrolla en el transcurso del proyecto o de pronto lo tenía muy claro al principio. Si lo tienes claro, perfecto, lo puedes incluir a la meta. Si no, eso es algo que poco a poco en el proceso del proyecto se va definiendo sobre qué, digamos, ese detalle que hace el proyecto más significativo y más claro. Now, your task is to write and revise your inquiry questions. So that makes two tasks. You have to write and revise your goal and also write and revise your inquiry questions and make sure that they achieve all your goal. Now let's move on to the third part, which is your action plan. So you've set your goal and you've written some inquiry questions to help you reach your goal, but what happens in between? Well, you have to plan that. And you have to make a plan, get it to work, and stick to it so that you can reach your goal. So how will you develop your inquiry to reach your goal? You have to think about this very, very carefully. Let's have a look at an example. So we can see here in this example, this is the action plan of the example I was showing you before about the CCB MUN webpage. And you can see here how there are different columns to this action plan, and it is divided by inquiry questions. So there's a plan of how you're going to develop each inquiry question. So if the first inquiry question was, what are the main aspects that make a website attractive and at the same time have the amount of information needed, then the student is asking herself different questions. So how good is the CCBMUN, the current website? And she says, okay, what am I going to do for that? I'm going to create a survey. And how am I going to do it? By using SurveyMonkey. And when am I going to do it? And she says, by October. And then she writes notes or questions, to follow up on that are relevant. So then another action can be, how and where can I make a good website? Is it possible to use a school website? How will I find this out? So I'm going to interview Sammy Barbosa, the person in charge of communication. How? I'm going to ask him questions, which I'll write down and record. When? Break time on Friday or after recess week. So this person has actually decided and pinpointed who they're going to interview. So it should have that level of detail on when, and anything that's useful for you in your plan, as much detail as you want. If we look at the fourth line where it says, look for tips of what is needed to make a good website. We're still on inquiry question number 1. And she says that the action that she's going to take is research and internet. Okay, why not include the actual specific pages and what you find out in each page? So if she says that she's going to look at 5 different pages, well, there you can include the actual detail, and page by page write the notes about what you are finding out and what's relevant to you and what's useful about those 5 different pages. So an action plan, you can develop this action plan as you want. The important thing is, this is just an example, and the idea is that for you to develop it in the best and detailed way that's going to be useful for you. And you would do this for each inquiry question. I'll share this presentation with you so you'll be able to look at these action plans in more detail afterwards. You can see here the third question, how does a website affect the success of an organization? And again, some of the actions, she's going to do several interviews to Sammy, to Juan Carlos Guerrero, who's the head of ICT, to Felicity Bedford, and to internet and other forms of research. Okay, so your task now is to write your own action plan. So tasks you have are to write or rewrite your goal, your inquiry questions, and your action plan. This must be finished this week, so you are ready to research at full steam during September. You will be accompanied by a supervisor and me during this process, and I hope to be with you very, very soon so that we can continue this process together. And we've got other things that we'll be looking at. The next step will be making a connection to a global context, and also we will also be looking at developing our skills and making an inventory of strong and weak skills. So I hope to see you soon.